Ugh, I can't believe it. This motherfucker stole a scoop of my pre-workout. Nah, that's Tren. How does testosterone affect your mind? Hey guys, in this video, I'm going to talk about the impact that superphysiological levels of testosterone had on my mood and behavior, and just detail what changes I noticed so that you can have an idea of what to expect yourself. I did a video on the physical changes I noticed. If you've not seen it, check it out. First thing I noticed was an increase in confidence. I became much more self-assured and found that it was much easier to step outside my comfort zone and take risks. A good example of this is during my first cycle, I was doing a lot of cold approach. Me and my mates would go to busy high streets and malls and pick up women. And if anyone's ever done cold approach before, you'll know that it's more of a mental game than anything else. On the surface, it seems quite easy. See girl, walk up, hit on her, she's interested or she's not interested. What's difficult about it though is keeping your mental state level and unreactive to external validation, or in this case, lack thereof. And I remember there would be times when we would go out and get nothing but rejections. And after that, it's your job as a man to pick yourself back up, show some mental resilience, and continue. I noticed a radical difference between being on and off testosterone while doing cold approach. The results were about the same, but I found that on testosterone, I gave a lot less fucks about some of the harsher rejections and whether one particular interaction went well or not. Another good example that comes to mind of this increased confidence is if I had an important phone call to make, there would be much less hesitation and I'd find it easier to just take the action without overthinking it. I'm sure you've been there before, with the phone in your hand, completely paralyzed, overthinking all the possible ways the conversation could go. But on super physiological amounts of testosterone, I found it much easier to just turn off the emotional, overanalyzing part of my brain and just take the action. So whether it's talking to a hot girl, making an important phone call, or any other scenario where you need to think on your feet, pull the trigger and take action quickly without too much hesitation, that's where testosterone is going to be your best friend. My buddy, wherever I go, he go, my buddy. And I did talk about some of the mechanisms behind this in a video called PFS and the importance of DHT. DHT, aka dihydrotestosterone, is the most powerful male androgen found naturally in the body, and it's responsible for male characteristics, behaviors, and traits. A percentage of your testosterone gets converted to DHT via a mechanism and pathway called 5-alpha reductase. So if you're taking super physiological amounts of testosterone, you can expect to have super physiological amounts of DHT too. DHT has been shown to have anti-anxiety and antidepressive properties. And there was one study on rats where androgens were blocked in the brain using an anti-androgen called flutamide. And the rats then demonstrated anxiety-like behaviors. Superphysiological testosterone, without a doubt, improved my confidence and lowered my anxiety. Remember, this is just my experience. I'm not recommending you do this without serious consideration. There's risks and trade-offs that come from taking testosterone, but you could also argue that the risks of not doing it are just as great. For example, imagine if you saw your 10 out of 10 girl and being on super physiological amounts of testosterone was the difference between you going up and trying to make something happen or being a pussy and not doing it. That girl could have ended up being your next girlfriend, or it could have been an awkward interaction where you get rejected and feel uncomfortable for the next few minutes. The point is, you don't know until you do it, and testosterone definitely helps you take the action and do it.
Come on, do it.
Okay, next up, motivation and drive. It's no secret that the most driven and highly achieving men, with exceptions of course, have the highest testosterone levels. And I'm sure we've all heard Andrew Huberman talk about how testosterone makes effort feel good. And it's true, it does. Using testosterone, I find it much easier to be regimented. You know, without fail, I would write up a to-do list on a night. Not only that, but I would wake up the next day actually excited to tackle the tasks that I'd put down and check them off. And for me personally, this was a radical shift. I never had a blood test prior to taking androgens, but I must have been borderline hypergonadal because I had a lot of the symptoms. My motivation and drive were never there to the extent that it is now. So if you're working on projects where you have to invest a significant amount of time in order for it to pay off, then being on testosterone will definitely impact how you show up and tackle the daily tasks that bring you closer to achieving that goal. It seems like testosterone has an impact on rewiring the brain's reward pathways more towards long-term gratification and away from short-term dopamine seeking instant gratification type behaviors. It probably goes back to the whole make an effort feel good thing. The pursuit of the goal feels better than what I like to call dirty high kinds of dopamine that you would get from something like binging on junk food or watching porn. There's also a certain level of stress resilience that comes with testosterone, and using super physiological amounts turns that dial up to 10. All androgens suppress cortisol to some degree, which is your body's primary stress hormone, some more significantly than others. But what does this actually look like in day-to-day life? I like to think of it like this. Everything on the surface could be going wrong, but you have a deep sense that you can handle it. You might lose your job or go through a horrific breakup, but on high testosterone, it just doesn't seem to affect you as much. And it's not like that you don't care at all. It's just much easier to mentally bounce back from and move on. I want to give you my take on roid rage as well. I'm of the belief that it's a made up term by the mainstream to demean steroids. And I don't think it's going to affect most people the way the media will have you believe. Psst, it's fake news, almost like everything else they put out. You know, they act like if you take any amount of a steroid, then you instantly turn into a psycho. It's just not true. Maybe that's the case after weeks and weeks of a large calorie deficit while you're blasting your socks off on Trenbolone. But on other androgens, for most people, largely bullshit. I did feel slightly more irritable while I was cutting on Anavar, but outside the gym, the increase in aggression was very minimal. The compound that did seem to affect me the most mentally was Tren, which I can do a separate video on if you guys want me to. Drop it in the comments and let me know. Overall, I consider myself to be a pretty level-headed guy, and testosterone didn't cause any perceivable aggression towards other people. But what it did do is make me more assertive. I found it much more likely to just say what I was thinking and speak up for myself, when previously I might have just bitten my tongue to keep the peace. The major wild card for me with how testosterone affected me mentally was and is estrogen. When it's in range, everything's good. However, when it got a little bit too high, my mood would become more unstable and my sleep would become a little bit more restless. And after a few bad nights sleep in a row, it just messes with your mood and your state. I think that happens with anyone regardless of whether they're using androgens or not. Get your sleep, kids. So after experiencing that, I made sure that my estrogen was dialed and in range. I've experienced low estrogen before too. That was actually from using too much Primo. And it almost gave me the opposite effect. I just felt emotionless and fatigued. Overall, testosterone is a very powerful modulator of mood and behavior. This is just the effect it had on me. You might be a little bit different. Some people seem to react to it more strongly than others, but in general, I would say that you can expect an increase in masculine traits and behavior, both the good and the bad. It seems like testosterone amplifies existing personality traits, meaning you'll become more of what you already are. There's a saying which I heard and I like, and it goes something like this: steroids don't make you an asshole. You were already an asshole, but now you're an asshole on steroids. For me, that absolutely nails it. Thanks for watching, guys. Hit the like button, drop me a comment, subscribe for more of this content. Enhancedplayer.com is the blog. See you next time.